Hi, I'm Seraphim. One of the most common questions that I get from those who have recently awakened or recently identified themselves as an empath, or even just people who want to develop their own intuition, is how do I tell the difference between what is true, genuine intuition and what may be wishful thinking or the ego self? When you're first getting started tuning back into the intuitive voice, it can be really confusing trying to determine between the two. So today I wanted to give you just a kind of a quick checklist of tools that you can run through to help you determine on the fly what is true intuition versus what may be wishful thinking or what may be coming from an emotional charge within. So if that's something that you've been struggling with and you're trying to tune back into your intuition and redevelop that skill, because we always have it, our intuition is always with us, we just sometimes forget to listen to it, then stick around because I'm going to help you determine once and for all which is which. Welcome to the Empowered Empath. Recognizing the difference between intuition and emotion is actually a lot easier than you may realize. There are some very clear indicators and very marked differences between the way intuition feels in the body and the way emotion is experienced. So today I'm going to give you some very clear signals that you can run through the next time you're just not certain whether or not that intuition is coming from true source knowledge. Number one, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, how does this feel in the body? You want to check in with the sensations that you're experiencing along with the information. So many of our emotions bring with them a very powerful physical charge. So this can be like a feeling of anxiety or agitation. There's also not a sense of consistency around whatever the information is that you feel you may be receiving. So when you check back in with that, it's really inconsistent. You don't feel a sense of surety or certainty around that information. You kind of have a sense of maybe this might be an intuition, but there isn't really a sure sense of knowing around it. And typically, this will also bring a sense of agitation or some anxiety with it. On the other hand, intuition, if we compare the two, they're completely different experiences. So intuition also may bring with it some physical sensation. You may have the hairs raise on your arms or the back of your neck. You may get some tingling or some pressure at your crown chakra, but it does not bring a sense of agitation with it. And this is true even if the information isn't necessarily a desired outcome. So intuition has a sure sense to it. It's a sense of knowing, and also it may bring with it a sense of expansion, almost as if the information was always part of you. It's not something that came from an outside source. When we're experiencing emotion, essentially what's happening is we're coming up with a what-if scenario in our head, and then our emotions are feeding into that, and they're creating a feedback loop of experience and of sensation in the body. With intuition, it's not a mental exercise and it's not an emotional exercise. It's simply a sense of knowing. And as I said, there will not be a sense of anxiety around that information. When you tap into that information, there's a sense of surety and of calmness. This is why it can be difficult at first to tap back into the intuitive voice, because intuition isn't loud. Intuition is very, very quiet. It's not trying to get your attention. It's not trying to convince you of anything. It's simply information that is available to you. So check in with the body. What are you experiencing? If there's any sense of agitation, if there's a sense of anxiety, and if there's just an inconsistent feel, then very likely what you're experiencing is emotion, which is connected to that wishful thinking or the ego self desiring a certain outcome, versus intuition, which is going to be very quiet, but it's going to be very sure, very calm, and it's not going to bring any kind of agitation with it. It's simply a sense of awareness. Almost, they say, an expansion of your awareness for a reason. This is exactly how intuition feels. Number two. Number two is a bit of an extension of number one, in that you actually want to take it a step further and now ask yourself, where in the body are you experiencing this intuition or this information? Where exactly do you feel it's arising from? Intuition typically arises from the heart or the energetic body. So if you're engaging in thought, you're back in that feedback loop of thoughts, emotions. And if this information is arising from a mental exercise or if it's sitting in your mind, I would definitely advise you to be suspicious of it. Intuition is typically felt in the heart or the gut areas, physically in the body, or in the energetic or light body. So if you're feeling that the intuition is arising from one of these places, it's much more likely to be true and genuine intuition than if this is sitting in your mind as a thought or an image. So check in and ask yourself, where is this information seated? Where is it sitting, and where am I deriving this from? Number 3 is going to sound super obvious, but it's kind of incredible, some of the revelations that can come with a very simple question. So what you want to ask yourself for number 3 is simply, is this true? Right? Sounds pretty obvious. But in asking yourself this, intuition, I said before, is consistent. It's quiet, but it's consistent. So when you ask yourself this question, your whole being is going to be on board. If it's intuition, you will be able to say yes. Even though that intuition is quiet and it's not trying to convince you of anything, there's no parts of you that are in conflict about the answer to that question. So, and I will say this, you can ask yourself in your mind, you can just ask yourself quietly, or you can speak out loud. You can ask yourself out loud. Frankly, I like to talk to myself, so I will ask myself this question out loud sometimes, or I will speak what I feel is the intuition and then ask myself if it's true. Sometimes hearing things out loud can just change how we digest or take in that information. So definitely recommend you give that a try. Emotion, the reason why this is so useful is because emotion is inconsistent. Emotion is buying into all of those what if stories that you're telling yourself in your head. And so when you ask yourself, is this true? There are parts of yourself that are going to be in conflict with whether or not it's true. So part of you might want to say yes and part of you might want to say no, but there's no consistency here. Intuition, your whole being is on board and is saying yes. This is true. And the more that you develop this conversation, the louder the voice of your intuition is going to become. And really just the more used to listening to it, you're going to become. So definitely encourage you to give this one a try. Okay, the last suggestion that I have for you to help you determine the difference between emotion or wishful thinking and intuition. This is one that you may want to keep a journal on hand. Otherwise, it's not really something that you can do on the fly. But I really recommend that you write your intuitions down. Be them dreams that come to you or just knowings that come to you. Write them down and revisit that a few weeks later, a month later, 2 months later. This is going to help you determine, how did that feel? When you're writing your intuitions down, remember to write any sensations down with them. That's going to help you determine, how does it feel for you? How does it feel in your body? Where do you typically experience true knowing and true intuition versus emotion? So if you start documenting that and then you revisit it and have a look and a read through, that's going to help you to really solidify what is true for you and what is just wishful thinking. What does that feel like and what are the differences? So that's a quick and easy one. I know that one probably feels a little bit more like homework, which is why I saved it for last, but it's certainly useful. So I do recommend that you give that a shot as well. Okay, now that I've given you just a few super quick and easy checkpoints that you can run through to determine the difference between intuition and emotion, I also feel it's really important for you to understand that intuition, it's clear and it's objective and it's not attached to any outcome either way. So it doesn't matter whether we desire the outcome or not, that intuition is going to come in for us and give us a true representation or a true reflection of what we can expect. That said, there are absolutely going to be circumstances in your life where you are simply too emotionally charged to really hear the intuition through the cacophony of your emotions. And that's okay. So I wanted to share a personal story where I had my own difficulty really determining between intuition versus wishful thinking. because it happens to everyone. It happens to the best of us. When I first moved to beautiful Vancouver Island, it was a few years ago now, and I have two sweet little fur babies, my two kitties. One, Merlin, who I call my familiar, he is not a fighter. This cat, you'll recognize him from my intro, but he is just a little love. He doesn't understand hunting like mice. He wants to make friends with mice. So the second day, literally the second day that we were here, Merlin got out. Not an area that he's familiar with. This is a cat who's afraid of grass. He doesn't like anything moving around him, and here the boughs of the trees are huge and it's super windy, super rainy. So I was devastated. Days were going by, he wasn't coming home, and I was thinking, I just don't know how he's even going to survive out there by himself. So of course I'm out and I'm taking all the right action. I'm talking to the neighbors. I'm putting up posters. I've alerted the local SPCA, and I'm doing everything I can to find him. And 2 weeks go by and I haven't found him. In the meantime, I'm of course consulting my tarot. I'm asking my guides and spirit, is he coming home? What do I need to do to bring my boy home? What I'm told is that he will return before my birthday. Well, when I did this, my birthday was 3 weeks away. And it's going on 2 weeks. He still hasn't come back. And I'm really starting to doubt this intuition. And every time I check back with it, it feels consistent, but I'm doubting myself. I'm feeling like, well, that's got to be wishful thinking. It's already been 2 weeks. And this cat, he's not used to being outside. I don't see how he's going to be able to survive. There's mountain lions here. We come from a city. Now we're in nature. Now we're in the wildlife. So I was really worried about him. Anyhow, long story short, I ended up finding a meditation, which in a way allows you to connect with your lost pet and help them find their way home. So I started doing this meditation, and literally 3 days. That's all it took. Did this meditation for 3 days, and my boy comes home. Literally comes home, like he's at the house. I couldn't even believe it. I was so grateful. This is 3 days before my birthday. So even for me, this was a time where it was super difficult for me to buy into the belief that yes, this intuition is true, even though it was quiet, even though I know what intuition feels like. I was doubtful because I wanted that outcome so badly. I didn't want to get my hopes up and then wind up being devastated. So it's completely natural, and there are going to be times in your life where you're not able to determine which is which. And in those moments, you just have to sit back and trust that the outcome is going to be in your highest and best good, and trust in the universal flow of abundance. Also, trust that there may be a lesson in that difficulty that you're having. Once you come through that, you may find that it's way easier to determine what's intuition and what is wishful thinking. I know that was the case for myself. I hope you'll allow yourself the space to feel into what is intuition versus what is emotion for you, and use the circumstances in your life to hone this awareness and to hone this understanding within yourself. We are given experiences that help us to develop. The universe always gives us exactly what we need to grow. So I do hope that you will run through this checklist. Let me know how they work for you. And if you have any other methods that you like to use to determine the difference between intuition and wishful thinking, I really want to hear about them. So please let me know in the comments below. And like I say, come back and let me know how these checkpoints worked for you, and if you were able to determine or really develop that understanding within yourself of what's intuition versus what may be emotion or the ego self, wishful thinking, all of that. So thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like and share with your friends. I'm new to YouTube, so it helps me out a ton. Also, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I post a new video. If you'd like to learn more about my practice or book a personalized session with me, you can do that at tarotbyseraphim.ca. And if you'd like to join the Empowered Empath Facebook group, you want to visit Tarot by Seraphim on Facebook. But I'm going to link to all that good stuff in the description below. Thank you so much again for watching. Blessings, and I will see you next week.